What is up, Terp fans? Welcome into the Shell Shock Experience, the podcast that's going to get you hyped up for this year's TBT experience with Shell Shock. We're running it back this year, so we're going to have some of our favorite Terps come in, talk to us about their experience, and just really kind of help us get excited for the alumni team next summer. Obviously, Maryland basketball season is about to start, so we've got that to look forward to as well. But our first guest on the show here, Mr. Dave Neal. Dave, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Matt. Super excited to always get together with fellow Terps alum and just talk about basketball and having a good old conversation.
Yeah, it's nice just to, I don't know, I think anybody that likes basketball can sit around and talk basketball for, hours at a time. So I won't keep you that long, but I just figured we'd go through some of the, the heyday stuff for you and go from there. Before we get too far into it, we are brought to you by Vision Media Solutions. So appreciate them sponsoring the podcast here, and probably have other sponsors for you throughout the life of the show. But that's the general idea and premise for everybody. You can catch this on a couple different YouTube channels, and we'll be telling everybody where they can find this longer term. But for now, you are watching this, please tell a friend, hit that like button for us if you're watching on YouTube. We always appreciate that. The more word of mouth this gets, the more opportunity there is for us to, keep getting guests and keep growing this thing. So we appreciate it. But Dave, I basically, we kind of overlapped at Maryland. I graduated in 2010. My friends and I always called you the people's champ because you just had the highest approval rating of anybody on the team while we were there. I guess while you were playing, is that something you were aware of? Because you just, I don't know, it just seems like people really gravitated to you.
I haven't heard that one before, so that's a first. But I love it. I mean, I kind of grew up and I've always kind of embellished being kind of the outgoing, the very kind of friendly, kind of lend a hand if you can. The life of the party, some people might have said sure. Back in my glory days. But I mean, I think that's what made me successful. I mean, I've kind of fueled off the fans' energy and kind of the excitement that they brought to the games. I feel like I did the little things. I mean, I wasn't one of those athletes that were going to dunk on somebody or do something crazy above the rim, but I did the things that the fans loved and the fans wanted to see, which is taking the charges, boxing out, doing a lot of the fundamentals that I feel like are being pushed away a little bit in the game nowadays. But I think it's a lot of the fans out there, the basketball fans especially, they really appreciate that type of stuff and players. And that's one thing that I always kind of kept close to me, and I felt like what made me successful and separated me from a lot of players out there.
I think part of that, though, just what you explained is a little bit of the everyman theory. Granted, you're 6'7", right? But so that's not everybody can relate to that. But you weren't dunking on guys and doing crazy stuff. You did it by playing smart and playing hard. And I think a lot of times, you were guarding a guy that was 2, 3, 4 inches bigger than you too. So there's that aspect of it too. Kind of the lunch pail approach. I don't know, just on that, when you guard somebody so much bigger than you, over the course of a whole season, that probably took a toll, I would imagine.
No, definitely. I mean, 100% it did. And I mean, you kind of learn what works for you. I mean, I think strength was one of the things that I had over a lot of people. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the weight room when I was playing in Maryland. I'm not going to say I was an extremely dirty player, but I had some tricks underneath my sleeve that worked when I needed it. Just because I wasn't the most athletic, and I wanted to be on the court, I wanted to play, I wanted to make an impact, and I was willing to do some little things that I felt like some people might not want to do. But I knew that was would give me an opportunity to get on the court, play in front of an amazing crowd, play against some amazing players and some amazing universities. And it's something I kind of just took close to heart and put on my shoulders and wanted to really bring to the team.
You kind of represent that DMV approach, even the Gary Williams mold of player of nothing was given here. You had to earn everything. You didn't play much the first 3 years. And then by senior year, you're averaging 8 and 5 on a team, making a real run in the tournament here. And you guys probably didn't go as far as you would have liked ultimately, but that was a legitimate team. You didn't just backdoor your way in, and you were a huge part of that. So I think Maryland fans could look at that and see this dude is here because he worked, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I give Gary a ton of credit. I mean, he never lost faith in me. Even through the earlier 3 years where I wasn't really playing, and he never really lost faith. And I'll never forget this story. It was into my junior year, going into my senior year, giving people transferring and just the way the team was breaking down. He took time and brought me into his office, and he was like, Dave, this is a great opportunity for you to really come in and have an impact on this team next year. I want to give you the opportunity. I want to kind of talk to you what kind of summer plans and kind of what your work ethic should be to really set you up to give you that opportunity to have an impact. And it was like a 2 or 3 hour meeting. We kind of just sat in there and we walked through and kind of picked my game apart, picked my kind of athleticism and just things I really need to improve on. And Gary didn't have to do that. I mean, he knew I didn't give a lot on the courts specifically for the first 3 years, but he knew what I did in practice every single day, the work ethic I had in practice and off the court, just the mentality that I would bring every single day, even though I wasn't getting a lot of playing time. So I think he saw all that and he was like, I'd love to give Dave an opportunity and I'm going to invest time in him and really give him what I think can make him successful. And obviously it was on me to kind of take that in and really put in that effort for that summer. But I did. I lived in the gym, lived in the weight room, worked out with the teammate. I mean, my teammates, spent time with the coaches. And it paid off, as you touched on earlier. I mean, I went from not playing at all really to starting, being a captain along with Landon Milbourne and Greivis Vasquez. And we made a very solid run into the NCAA tournament where a lot of people doubted this team. I mean, I was the starting center. I was 6'7". They're like, that's crazy for ACC basketball. But, I mean, we used all that noise to really motivate us and push us every single day in practice to show people you don't need to be the most talented. You don't need to be the most athletic team. We knew we had the greatest coach or one of the greatest coaches in college basketball history on our side. And we just came in every day ready to work and put everything in there, and it paid off. I mean, we beat North Carolina. We beat Michigan State that year, both who were in the national championship. And we showed a lot of people that you can make some noise not being the most athletic, most talented team if you're willing to kind of invest and believe in your teammates, believe in yourself, and step up and play the game the right way it should be.
You had 15 games that year in double figures. 2 of them were against North Carolina, which has got to be pretty awesome as somebody growing up, in ACC country. Scored 15 points in an NCAA tournament win over Cal. I mean, that's got to be pretty awesome to look back on. But I got to imagine those 2 UNC games stand out, at pretty top of the list there. Yeah,
I mean, the UNC games they were personal to me. So one of my high school teammates, Marcus Ginyard, played at UNC, and obviously just knowing Marcus and getting to meet a lot of the team guys or the teammates down there, Tyler Hansbrough, Ty Lawson, Danny Green, like it was a fun game to play. I always got super, super excited, super, super hyped. I mean, I was going against Tyler Hansbrough, one of the most decorated college basketball athletes of all time. And stuff like that just fueled me to want to show people like I can play with the best. It doesn't need to be every single day, but I can show up. I can compete. I can work hard. I can score points. I can rebound. I can make impacts. And I took it as an opportunity to show people that I could be a legit ACC Division I basketball player. And those were the times to do it because it was on national television. Everybody was watching. UNC was playing. And so it's almost like a blur. I mean, bringing that back up, it puts a smile on my face because it was the greatest time of my life, but it was something special. I'll never forget. I think it was at home against North Carolina, and we needed a big win to kind of cement ourselves for the NCAA tournament. And it's a close game. We were battling, and I think we turned the ball over, and North Carolina was running, and Tyler Hansbrough was on the break, and I stepped in there and took a charge towards the end of the game and kind of turned the momentum a little bit when UNC was hot there. And obviously, anytime you take a charge in College Park, the fans get super excited. So I think it changed the momentum, brought the crowd back into it, and we ended up winning the game and really helping our chances to make a run in the NCAA tournament. But those were always the fun. I mean, the best games, any of the ACC games, and you miss those battles with UNC, with Duke, with UVA, with any of the schools. It was just extremely blessed and fortunate to experience those.
I can't imagine what that's like, taking a charge on Tyler Hansbrough of all people, just given the way he played. I got to imagine that's one you felt when you got up the next morning. Like I know you're young enough, you can shake it off, but he's a big boy.
Yeah, I probably stay in the ice bath a little bit longer after the game to let the muscles to recover. But yeah, it definitely was a little sore. I mean, anytime. I mean, that was the one thing that I think made Tyler so hard to play against, is he never stopped. His motor was 100%. Anytime he was on the court, he was always moving. But yeah, it was to tell your kids and people that you got to play against Tyler Hansbrough. I mean, is amazing.
That charge is a huge one, but my sort of, I don't know, like this indelible moment I remember from your actual career is the pick set on Nolan Smith in College Park. For anybody that doesn't remember this, you hit him, or he hit you at about half court. He was going full speed and no one called it out. And he just basically bounced off of you. I'm assuming you knew Nolan before that, just given being from the area at all. But I don't know. Have you guys?
No, yeah, we grew up playing AAU basketball together, being from the kind of DMV area. And I always tell people, like, there was no ill intention.
Oh yeah, of course, it was a clean play.
I was always told to protect your teammates.
Yep,
he decided to pick them up full court. One way to do that is obviously set a screen, and unfortunately, one of their teammates, it was Brian Zubak, didn't call the screen.
That's completely on him.
Completely on him. He got. Nolan Smith told me a couple of weeks after, he goes, he got lit up in the media or in the
practice and stuff
and video. Yeah, video and practice the next couple of days because he didn't call it out. He could have called it out. The fans were probably screaming as well. But he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, set the screen, went down and hit a three. And I'll never remember Coach K running out on the court and screaming, "Oh, that was illegal, this and that." And I told him I wasn't. I mean, you can watch the video. I was standing completely still. I gave him a bunch of time. He just didn't see me. And Eric Hayes did a great job running him into me. But yeah, most people I talk to always bring that up.
It's just cool that, like it's not a poster dunk. It's not a game-winning three. Like that was a huge play, especially because it was against Duke and Nolan was such a good player. And again, I assumed that you guys had that history. But I don't know if you see him now or anything, does that ever come up?
I haven't seen him in years. I mean, I know he's on the grind to become a coach. Last time I checked, he was at Louisville. I don't know if he's still there now. He's in Memphis. Okay. I'm sure. Yeah, if we got together, we'd laugh about it and talk about it. Just because it was one of those plays that I think that just speaks to who I was as a basketball player. Like I was willing to obviously step in there, set screens, take charges, box out, rebound, dive on the floor for a loose ball. And I think it's pretty cool to say, like, the play that speaks to who Dave Neal is during his time is setting a screen on Nolan Smith against Duke, who we all know we don't like. It's pretty cool.
On any of these Duke podcasts, especially the guys like our era and before, they all talk about how the program they hated the most was Maryland. And I think it's kind of like a mutual thing, because the fact that like we were as excited as fans as we were about, one of their guys getting laid out it speaks to that kind of hatred. And I don't know, it was like mutual respect / hatred. I feel
it's mutual respect. I mean, yeah, hate is a strong word, especially nowadays. But yeah, I think just if you grew up a Maryland fan, which I did, kind of from Northern Virginia, going to Cole Fieldhouse and watching some of those battles back in the day. I think it's one of those teams that every game was a grind. Duke was always very good and always highly rated. And like,
was there animosity between the players though? Like, did you feel that the same way fan bases, like was there extra levels of, I don't know, hypeness, I guess,
you definitely, I would say Duke, UNC, some of those more like the highest caliber teams and with very long-standing histories of success. For me, it got me extremely hyped. I mean, walking into the Dean Dome, walking into Cameron Indoors, and just knowing that you're playing in two stadiums that have a ton of history, the best of the best college basketball players have played, and you wanted to win just so you could say, hey, I went to Cameron and I won. I went to the Dean Dome and I won. Not a lot of people can say that because they're both very difficult places to play with a lot of history and a lot of noise. So me personally, yeah, I always got extra hype for those games just because there was so much history and a lot at stake for most of those. If you win those games, I mean, it's a great resume builder for what you're really trying to achieve through that season.
I don't know if it's like I'm older and maturing now or the fact that we're not in the same conference with them anymore, but I'm like, I've been watching like the Duke Blue Planet show on YouTube that the team hosts. Like John Shire seems very likable, and I kind of hate myself that I can say things like that out loud. So Maryland fans, please don't judge me too hard, but it's these guys that were our general contemporaries are now, running programs like that is pretty wild to think about.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, John Shire's, he got an opportunity. Coach K believed in him. He let him step up to be the coach and succeed him after however many years Coach K was there. And he's been very, very successful. And that's something that kind of lives close to me as a player. I mean, you really get one opportunity, especially from my perspective as a player. It's how you take on that opportunity and how successful you are. And if you've put the effort in beforehand, if you put the work ethic in, the hard work, and you've done your homework and everything that at the end of the day, when you get that opportunity, you say, I'm going to be as prepared as possible. It goes a long way. And I think John did. I mean, he was on the staff there for a while. He got to learn from one of the best. He probably put his time in, his due diligence, and now it's paying off. I mean, he's pulling in the best recruits in the country. The name helps and just the history of Duke basketball, but I do think he is a very like a player's coach. Like he knows he was a player once. He knows what it's like, and he's very workable and can work with these players at a level that he can relate to because he's been in similar situations as players not too long ago. So he can level with them and reason with them a little bit more than some of these longer tenure coaches that haven't played the game as recent.
Yeah, apparently he still laces it up with them in practice every once in a while. So
I love it. I wish I could. Yeah, that's amazing. Kudos to him because my body does not allow me to play much basketball anymore.
I was going to ask, you get out there at all, or just or knees back? What are we dealing
with? It's just I don't know. I've picked up the game of golf, and so that's kind of my
probably healthier long
term.
Yeah,
it's definitely healthier. And I will probably get into this a little bit, but being overseas and not being in countries where basketball is super popular, it's hard to find good quality basketball. And when you don't play a lot and you go out there and play for an hour or two, you wake up the next morning and realize you have bones and joints that you've never felt hurt before. And I got 2 young kids. I can't risk getting hurt and not being able to kind of help out as the dad. So, yeah, I don't, unfortunately, get to play a lot. I mean, I'll go out and shoot baskets with the kiddos, but the 5-on-5, 3-on-3 competitive stuff is few and far between.
Probably safer. Yeah, you've had plenty of miles there. It's nice to just be able to watch the game and appreciate something.
100%. Definitely.
You mentioned the warmer side of Gary there, like him taking you aside. And I don't know that as fans, we always got to see that. I had a journalism project my senior year where I was recording outside of Xfinity Center, and the prompt for the project was like, make a video on what it means to be a Terp. And I got tapped on my shoulder. I turned around, and it was Gary Williams. And he's like, what are you doing? What's the project? How can I help? I'm going to bring other people in. Like, he was just as nice and as warm as he could be. But there's also, a tougher side of Gary. And from what I heard, anecdotally, like, he was probably tougher on you than a lot of other guys. And it sounded like largely because he knew you could take it, and by yelling at you, he could kind of send a message to everybody else. So I guess, was that really the case? And did Gary get after you maybe extra hard?
No, I mean, definitely. Gary was, he was very hard on me. And I think it just, he does that to bring the best out of his players, or he did that to bring the best out of his players. Some people couldn't handle it. I embellished it. I loved it. My high school coach was very similar, obviously not to the same scale, but he knew I had a ton of potential in me, and I needed someone to light my fire some days. I mean, I think it's not for everybody, but Gary knew that's what fueled me. And on the days where I needed a little extra push or I was a little sluggish, Gary knew what it took to get me kind of back into my prime, to have a great day of practice or to set myself up for a great game. So I loved it. I mean, you push the bad stuff in one ear and out the other, and you really take in what he's trying to get you to be better at. But I think that's what made Gary successful as a coach. I mean, every day in practice, he was 110% energy. He was on everybody. He was pushing people. He wanted people to be successful. And he was just relentless about it. And he wasn't going to let up until it was the end of the season, because he wanted us to be the best player and the best team out there. And if he wasn't putting in the effort, it's hard for him to expect people to put in that effort as well. So Gary, I mean, he lived by example. He was all in when he stepped between those lines on the basketball court every single day, every single game, every single practice, watching video. I mean, he was one of the most passionate people about Maryland basketball. I mean, I can't speak. He was just an absolute coach, mentor, role model. I mean, I tell people this day I invited him to my wedding because he meant so much to me in my career and afterlife.
Did he show up, Dave? Did he make?
He did show up. He did.
Right,
yeah, he did.
There you go. All right, good. Okay.
And I mean, I do still keep in touch with him. Obviously, being overseas, it's a little bit harder. But we were back for about 10 months. I played golf with him in Troy. I had him out to an event at my country club. It was a Masters event, and he was a guest speaker. Okay. And so we try to stay in touch as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, it was the best 4 years, and I couldn't ask for a better coach, mentor, kind of leader through those 4 years at University of Maryland.
He's one of the guys that I think about, like, you see some coaches like Tony Bennett recently retiring and just not being cut out for this particular era. Like with Gary, like there was some tough love there, to say the least. And also he kind of wanted guys to like work their way up and build up to that point and, develop their game. And now guys don't want to do that in certain places as long. So I wonder about, how he would have fit in this era. But he was also a dude that, like, if you just gave him 5 people, he'd come up with a scheme to win you a game, even if he'd never met them before. So I think he would have been fine, but it is tough, I think, because as fondly as you talk about those years, like for someone like Gary, like that might have run a few people off earlier in their career and they didn't get to see the payoff from that, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different beast nowadays, but I mean, as you touched on earlier, Gary would have figured out a way to win. He always did, no matter who was showing up, who was on the court. He always seemed to get his team to play the best and compete the hardest every single day. Do I think Gary would enjoy being a coach right now, just given the way things are going right now in the sport of basketball? I don't think so, just because Gary truly, truly loves the game of basketball and what it's meant to him for his entire career. And I feel like now the love is still there for a lot of these kids, but they're driven by different things. And I mean, you hear coaches that retired and speaking on their experience of the way things are now. Like, it's not, people don't play for the name across their chest. They play for the dollar signs or what's being presented to them or what's incentivizing them to show up and play whatever sport they're in. And that's one thing Gary's like, if you don't want to come play for this team across your chest and show up every single day, probably not the best fit for you. But if you truly want to show up every single day, play for the University of Maryland and really put that jersey on and be the type of player that we know you can be, this is the right opportunity and we'll make you successful and you'll have a great 4 years. And I just don't think 80% of kids right now don't think like that. There's still some kids out there that grow up following a team. They love their team no matter what. If they get the opportunity to play there, I guarantee you they will. But Yeah, it's a different animal right now. Just the way sports in general are going at the collegiate level.
One of the guys I think that most embodied what you were just talking about there was your teammate Greivis Vasquez. Like player and coach fit of all time might be he and Gary. I don't know. From your perspective, what was it like playing with him?
It was amazing. He was just, I mean, full of energy. He similar to what Gary's kind of mindset is. I mean, he came every single day, no matter if we lost a game, if we won a game. I mean, his energy was always above everybody else, and he was always setting the example of what it needs to be to make this team great. I mean, he was in the gym after games getting shots up. He was in there before games. He would spend late hours in the gym working on his game. And when you see that as a player, you're like, man, he must really want this team to be great. He wants himself to be great. And so we all need to step up and kind of feed off his energy. And he was just extremely talented. His vision on the floor was unbelievable. He could see passes that, I mean, you saw sometimes the ball would hit a player in the head because you never knew you were open for that split second. And like, he could hit circus shots that you thought nobody was able to do, and he would figure out a way to get the ball up there and get in there. He would guard the fastest and most athletic player, and we all know Greivis is not the most athletic player, but he was always up for the challenge. He would never say no, and that's just something that you feed off of. When you're his teammate, if he's willing to take on the challenge, we all should be able to take on the challenge, because why not? If he's willing to invest and put his body in there and to give us the best opportunity to win the game.
I think maybe because of the injuries and he didn't get to have the pro career, he probably would have, like, he doesn't get talked about the same way as some of the guys that were that good a college basketball player, but he's also like one of the all-time characters in college basketball, I think, with the shimmies. And I remember one after he had like the 15 assist game, he was just driving through campus, hanging out the window of his car, like screaming 15 assists at people as he drove around. Like he was a different sort of dude, but I don't know, any particular story, from him that stands out to you?
I mean, the shimmies, I think I don't really have like one specific kind of like crazy story about Greivis, but I mean, just the way, I guess some of the Duke games at Cameron, like he would feed fuel to the fire for the Cameron Crazies. He would go over there, he would walk in the crowd, he would talk to the crowd, he would flaunt with them. Like, he loved that type of stuff. And for some people, they don't want to do that. They want to stay as far as away from those people. And Greivis was the opposite. He would go in there, he would talk with them, he would pass him the ball in pregame and say, "Come on, guys!" Like, really just try to get in with him. So they would be harder on him in the game, because he loved when people picked on him, when they yelled at him, when they doubted him. Like, those were the stuff that really made Greivis kind of the player that he was. But I mean, though I would say stuff like that, like just like being his charismatic self, and just being really kind of out there and loud and putting up the stats that he did some games. I mean, triple doubles,
that's crazy,
ton of points, hitting big shots. I mean, he had an amazing career that I think a lot of people didn't expect when he first came in there, and he showed a lot of people out there that he can be, I mean, one of the best in Maryland history from the basketball perspective.
Gary was just on the Inside Maryland Sports podcast here recently and talked to Jeff Erman and those guys who do an amazing job. So anyone listen to this, make sure to check them out. Gary talked about how they went to watch Kevin Durant play at Montrose, and we're like, "Oh, who's this other guy?" And just so sort of backdooring your way into maybe best player coach fit, in Gary's tenure is pretty wild.
100%.
Yeah, like that. Just, you need some of those things to work out and luck out, and you need people like you to stick around and be willing to kind of pay dues and work their way into the starting lineup and things like that. And that seems harder to do now in college basketball too.
For sure.
From that team, seemed like you guys were a pretty connected group of guys. Is there still a group chat here? I know for you being overseas is a little tougher, but anybody from that team you're still particularly tight with or keep in contact with the most?
I would say Greivis the most. I mean, he's the busiest man on planet Earth. I mean, he's back in Venezuela. He's doing some work with the Wizards. He's got a couple of things going on in Florida. But when I was back in D.C. For this last period before we moved back to Brazil. I saw him twice. I talked to Landon quite a bit. I mean, I saw Sean a couple games. Dino, I talked to a little bit. I mean, I just kind of playing on what you said earlier, like the people's champ. Like I'm a people person. I do it for a living, for my job. I love kind of just staying connected with folks. Is it as often as I would like? No, but just with life and kids and being
everybody's busy.
Harder. But there's so many platforms now where you can just reach out and say, hey, what's up? And I know just being their teammates, if I ever needed to have a conversation with one of them or just wanted to get on a Google Meet or a Zoom and just catch up, they'd be more than happy to do it. And I think one day, obviously, we'll get a fun reunion where we'll get a lot of the boys back together and reminisce on the good times of what we accomplished at Maryland. Hopefully
with this Terps team, maybe they'll make a Final Four run or something that we can all get excited about here.
I would love that. It would be special, and I think they're talented enough to make some noise. It was while we were back, I got to go to a couple games last year and see the team and just be back on campus, which was great. Kind of bummed that we're missing out this year with some of the recruits that came in and the transfers that are on the team. But I think the buzz is out there. A lot of people are talking about Derek Queen and some of the transfers coming in and having a huge impact. I always tell people buzz is great, but show me the money. Like when it's time to show up, how are we going to play? I mean, there's a lot to still be seen with this team, and I'm excited to see because I think they do have that kind of tenacity or grit in them. But it's all different when you step on the court and
the lights are on and
and there's refs, fans. But yeah, no, I'm very excited and very optimistic. But I think the first game is Saturday or Sunday, right, against Manhattan.
Yep, coming up against Manhattan. Starts on the 4th, I want to say, maybe.
I think it's Monday? The 4th, yeah.
Yeah, Monday. So maybe by the time listening to this, it might be the first game already because we're recording a little bit in advance of that. So hopefully they get the year off to a good start. Dave, I'm always curious about this. Like some guys, once they're done playing, they've put so much into basketball, like they don't want to watch it all the time or they don't live and breathe it anymore. I guess for you, like how much college basketball are you watching? Are you still catching every Terps game, or is it just, as you have time around life and family and all that other stuff?
I mean, I love sports. It's probably the only thing I watch on TV. So in general, if I'm watching TV, it's probably a sports game. Sure. I do my best. I mean, it's a little challenging being in South America and catching all the games. It's usually on my computer. I got to set up a VPN to get access to the Big Ten network or whatever network they're on to watch it. But I'm usually following it on my phone, just tracking the score if I can't watch it on my TV or on my laptop. I love basketball. Any type of basketball I can watch, if it's in person, if it's on a computer, if it's on a TV. I mean, I'm going to watch it. And my first and foremost will always be the Terps, just because I love it. It's a great brand of basketball, and I just like to see their success and hopefully winning a lot of games this year.
That would be nice. When you were back, did you get to catch up with Kevin Willard at all? Any thoughts or interactions with him so far?
I did not, unfortunately. We were back for a short period of time, and life is a little crazy I have 2 young kids. I met a couple of the players, but I didn't get a chance to interact with Kevin. But from what I've heard, I mean, people love him. He's doing an amazing job. I mean, he's filling the shoes of what Gary made that program to be. Obviously, he's still very early in his career there, but he's showing signs that he's in it to win it, and he's bringing in the players to do that. And now I think it just needs to start showing on the court a little bit with more wins and getting in the tournament and making some noise in that regards.
That's why I was curious. Is like he feels like he's got a little more of the Gary vibe, like it just kind of fits Maryland, maybe personality wise, a little bit better there. So I'm definitely with you. I like this year's team. Always like watching guys that play in the post too. So having 2 guys in Queen and Reese, I think will be interesting to see how they kind of work out together.
100%. They're deep there. They also have Braden, and I met Braden's parents when we were back in College Park, and he seems to be putting in a lot of work this off season. So I think he's got a chance, and having that depth. I mean, we all saw. I mean, one of Julian's crux is foul trouble. And so having someone that can come in there and obviously maybe take him out of the game when he gets tired and commits those fouls, and then not put him in a situation where he's in foul trouble could be a good thing. And so, I mean, it's nice to see that we got some depth with some big bodies to come in there and help.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I've heard good things from Pierce from practice and stuff like that too. So that'll be great. And last year's team, I think that was one of the things that was missing, is just kind of depth across the board here too. So having been able to go 10 plus guys deep is a huge luxury in college basketball right now.
100%, definitely.
The other thing we want to build a little excitement for here is the Shell Shock alumni team coming up this summer in the TBT. I don't know, Dave, have you watched any TBT or any thoughts on just sort of the idea of having an alumni team? For me, I think it's a really good thing for the program, is just have more opportunities to tap into that nostalgia, and it gets people excited about just Terps basketball in general, I think, too.
No, I love the idea of it. And if I was still playing, I would be 100% bought into being a part of it in some capacity. If it was coaching, if it was, I don't know, player development. I mean, I don't know what the roster looks like, but I like the idea of it. I mean, I think it's a great way to bring the brotherhood back together and kind of keep that brotherhood strong, where I mean, a lot of these guys are still playing professional ball. They're living overseas, but like, I don't care what anybody says. College is the best time of people's lives. It's where you make great friends. If you're an athlete, you kind of form that brotherhood. And anytime you can get back on the court or the football field or whatever sport you're playing with those guys that you invested so much time in for those 4 years, it is special. And so I think this is the point of what they're building here with this alumni kind of tournament is awesome.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that I'm glad you used that word brotherhood, because not to shout out the Duke guys, but I think that's something they've done a really good job of. And it helps when you only have one coach for like a 50-year period. But for Maryland, now that they're on the third coach, in the last handful of years, it's a good way, I think, to sort of overlap Gary guys with Turgeon guys with Willard guys and start to like build that community across eras of teams that, maybe don't exist already.
I agree. No, I mean, that's one thing I think we need to get better at just in general at Maryland is bringing that brotherhood back together, bringing the three different eras, Gary, Willard, and I know, and Turgeon. And this could be a great way to do it. And I think the University of Maryland needs to be kind of get bought in on what this can offer and kind of how it can kind of help build that brotherhood back up and go back to the glory days of what Maryland basketball used to be, even before my time. Could be super cool.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. From the school's perspective, right? It's an easy thing to endorse and embrace, and it's a good opportunity for them to spotlight their own former players. And there are even some guys that were playing before your time that are still playing overseas. You got James Gist is still going, and Nick Cantor-Medley just very recently hung it up in the last couple of years here too. So tapping into just guys like that, I think, is another cool opportunity to bring those guys and an Anthony Cowan or somebody like that together that didn't share the court at any point in time, but they got that connective thread. So,
and Mello, I mean, I'm a little biased to Mello because Mello went to the same high school as me, but getting those guys back together. I mean, I think we could build a great team. I know Mello was trying to play in the last one, and stuff like contractually just didn't work out for him to play in the games, but I think if we could get some of the guys that are still playing, we can make some noise, and it's $1 million. It's not chump change. So I'm excited to kind of see how the team comes together. Do you know who's coaching it? I know who coached Nima coached it last time.
Yeah, it'll be Nima again, and Ricky Goings will be the GM. So between the two of them, they're going to build out that roster. So I think we'll hear a lot of those names coming up here in the next couple months. But I would imagine Mello is at the very top of the wish list, I would say.
He's having a heck of a career so far overseas. I mean, he's doing well. So, I mean, I follow Anthony Cowan on Instagram, and he seems to be doing very well.
We've got dudes. Exciting. I mean, like you said, there are a lot of guys here. Yeah,
100%. It's going to be exciting. That's a good. I like Nima and Goings can do some great work. I know people love Nima and the work that he did when he was at Maryland. Players respected him and liked him. So he can definitely get the buy-in from some of these guys to come back and play in this tournament.
Yeah, I think that's the thing too, is you need guys that are going to be in it for multiple years. It's hard to win that thing in a 1-year time, but if people are kind of committed for a couple and you can gel a group together, that's pretty big too. Kind of like the Olympic team of alumni teams here, which will be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Dave, you mentioned growing up a Terp fan. Did you have an all-time favorite Terp, like guy you most resonated with you, or you preferred to watch growing up?
I mean, I don't have a specific player. I grew up idolizing Gary. I mean, I just loved, like, I mean, we would go to Cole Fieldhouse. My dad would take me and my brother over there to watch games. And like, Gary was almost sometimes more entertaining to watch on the sideline than the actual basketball game, just kind of ripping his suit jacket off, throwing it around, sweating. I mean, and as a kid, you're like, what's this guy doing? Like, this is catching more attention than the actual game that's going on. And then when you get to play for him, you realize that, I mean, that's just the way, that's the energy that he brought and the love that he had for the game and the love that he had for the University of Maryland. And just looking back on that and kind of seeing that in real time as a player is like, that's pretty awesome. Joe Smith was amazing. Yeah, he was phenomenal. But I mean, there was a ton of people that, I mean, that I kind of looked up to, and it was awesome. And then Cole Fieldhouse, you missed that place. That place was spectacular. If they could have somehow just renovated that and kept that alive,
that would have been huge.
Yeah, but they're making a lot of gains with. I think it's now is it still the Xfinity Center?
Xfinity right now, yeah.
And then what is a player house that they're building, or the player development center that's being.
I forget what it's called or what name they're given to it, but it's in the old
house or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Something like that. But yeah, they're beefing up the facilities, and that goes a long way, I think.
For sure. But yeah, I would say Gary's. I mean, he was the person that he's the reason why. I mean, I looked at a lot of schools at a high school. Gary saw me play. I think it was almost nearing the end of my senior year against DeMatha, close to College Park. He had one scholarship left. It was my chance to shine. I knew he was coming, and I think I had like 27 and 18 rebounds.
That's pretty good.
He called me the next day, and he was like, "Dave, I want to offer your scholarship." Never took a visit. Never kind of did anything to kind of see the facilities. But I think that just speaks to the love that I had for the University of Maryland. And if I was going to give him the opportunity to go there and get a scholarship, I didn't need to see all the bells and whistles. I knew it was the right opportunity for me.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I didn't know that, and that's really cool to hear. Also, kudos to you for showing up big in a big situation like that. That's also, he probably knew that situation too, and to see you show out like that, it's like, hey, this is a guy that'll perform when the lights are brightest.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, I had some offers going into my senior year. I made the decision with my head coach to push those aside, and I knew I had a big season ahead of me, and I knew the game that I had could attract schools like Maryland, Georgetown, Clemson, Princeton, to name a few. And my name started trickling around because of Mike Lonergan. He came and saw me play a couple times, and he finally convinced Gary to come out against DeMatha. I mean, back in the day, that used to be the best matchup for high school basketball in the country. And yeah, it paid off. But I think it goes back to what I said earlier. I mean, it's all about an opportunity, and I knew this was an opportunity to show Gary that I had the capability and the skills and the game to play at that level. And I think Gary saw it too, and he obviously invested in me and took the time, and it paid off.
Worked out pretty good for both parties there, I'd say.
100%.
I think that's if I put my like old man hat on for a minute, that's the one thing that's kind of a bummer. You hear from a lot of like local recruits now that they don't grow up Maryland fans. Like I think in general, like the younger group, they're fans of other players as opposed to like teams as much. But I'd love to just hear like, hey, I think Derek Queen watched the Terps more than maybe most, and that's probably the reason why they got a little bit of a hometown discount there.
For sure. No, I mean, the DMV area is, I mean, if you look back over the years, it's stacked with basketball players. And I think Willard knows that, and his staff that he's built, I mean, has some experience in the DMV market. And I think if they can get a team that's exciting to watch, it's fun, like Gary did when I was a kid, like that's how you're going to get these kids to be like, okay, man, this is the squad I want to play with when I get older. They're fun, they're energized, they win, they're exciting. And that's what's going to get these kids that are coming in, or kids that are looking to play D1 ball, come to University of Maryland in the DMV area. I mean, you got to have a brand, and I think Willard's on the right path to building that brand or identity again for what University of Maryland basketball is. And that's what's going to draw that attention for some of these guys in the area. And Derek Queen's a great example. I mean, he grew up right down the street. He stayed faithful and stayed loyal to University of Maryland, and I think that speaks to what Willard's doing right now, to kind of building that brand and identity again.
Yeah, and I think this transfer portal era, like certain groups just aren't going to click, and guys are still kind of figuring it out. So like last year being kind of a down year compared to the first year with Willard, I'm not too worried about. I think you're just going to have certain groups that don't gel quickly, and last year it just seemed like it snowballed for them. So I think this year's their opportunity to bounce back and show people
100%.
what the program's about.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, they got some leaders, they got some experience, guys that have played a lot of time, a lot of minutes on the court that can kind of set that example. And I think just the talent that Queen can bring to the team and the game, I think could be special. And then obviously the transfer from Belmont, Jacoby. I mean, he's supposed to be a stud. I haven't seen a lot of game of him, but he's supposed to be a game changer from what we need from the point guard perspective to really run the show.
Fingers crossed. And I'd love to check back in with you throughout the season here and see how that's working out for him. But as we start to wrap this up, Dave, just catch us up. Where are you at? Like you mentioned being in Brazil, but what are you up to these days? And how can fans kind of just, keep in touch with you here?
Yeah. So we just recently moved down to Rio de Janeiro about 6 months ago for my wife's work. She works for the State Department. Got two young kids, two girls, 5 and 2.5. And I kind of, for work now, I work for a kind of blockchain real estate startup. I do all the people operations, so kind of back office hiring, people experience for them. I've been here for about 2.5, almost 3 years.
Okay. Going well so far? Liking it?
Going very well. Yeah, I love it. I mean, we're at a high level. We're trying to kind of give people more accessibility to invest in residential real estate markets, like in Miami and Manhattan, a Phoenix and Austin. And we've created these price feeds to feed this exchange. But with the way real estate's going these days, it's becoming more and more expensive. And so we're trying to build a platform where people can long and short markets based on real-time transactions. So similar to other assets and commodities, the way people trade it, we're trying to make that accessible to real estate. And my whole family grew up in real estate, more of the traditional side. So I like to say I'm kind of following in my parents' footsteps, just more on a tech front approach to being brought to real estate.
This is the 2024 version of that, right?
2024 version. That's a great way to put it. But yeah, no, we'll be back. I'm hoping to make it back for a game or two this year. I mean, or if we make a run to the Final Four.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you can bet on that I will be there for that. But no, I mean, when I'm back, I try to get back to College Park as much as possible just to kind of say hello. I mean, see the team, see the fans. But that's kind of where we'll be here for about 3.5, 4 years. If anyone that listens to this podcast comes down to Rio, feel free to hit me up on Instagram, X, or find a way to get in touch with me. I'd love to see Terps fans down here. I'd even love to get the basketball team down here. They do some kind of summer tours with some of the professional teams down here. Howard came this last year or this couple of months ago and played against a team down here and got to see the team, and it'd be cool to kind of maybe get Maryland down here just to kind of see the history and the landscape of what Rio can offer.
You mentioned X and Instagram. What are the handles for folks if they want to be following along and keeping tabs on you?
So X is Dave Neal 35. And I actually just changed my Instagram is Lean Dave. So my wife and I put a funny little spin on both of our Instagrams, but it's Lean Dave for Instagram and Dave Neal 35 on X. Awesome. Yeah, feel free to always hit me up, reach out. I'm I love speaking on podcasts. So again, Matt, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this was great.
Looking
Love to have you
forward
back.
to yeah, be back on sometime soon.
Very cool. All right. Any final words for Terps fans here as we call this a day?
I think just get excited for this year. I have a very high. I'm very optimistic on what this team can do. Just kind of talking to people within the team at Maryland and just kind of following what they did this offseason. So get excited, support the Terps, get to the games, be loud, cheer them on, and have fun this year watching some basketball.
Awesome. Dave, thank you again for doing this. Really appreciate the time. And thank you for your contributions to Maryland basketball as a fan. I really appreciate that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, great chatting with you, Matt. Thanks again.
All right, everybody, you know the drill. Again, hit that like button for us on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to the feed here. That way these just pop right into your podcast feed. And that way you can catch up with all the great Terp interviews we have planned for you. If there's specific former Terps you want to hear from, just let me know on any social media platform, and I'll try my best to line those up. I guess, Dave, last question for you maybe. Is there who's the next guy you think we should talk to on the podcast here? Anybody think of that'd be a particularly good interview?
You should get James Gist. I think he's back in the DC area. I don't know if he's been on here before, but I think he's not back overseas yet. I haven't talked to him in a couple months, but he's an amazing person. Obviously had a heck of a career overseas, heck of a career in Maryland, and very loved. So, he's always a great person to bring on and chat with.
Awesome, dude. And that's a great suggestion. And he will be my next text here. So thank you for being the first official guest here on the show. And I look forward to touching base with you soon.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Matt. Thanks so much.
All right, everybody. Again, we're brought to you by Vision Media Solutions. Fear the Turtle. We will catch you all next time.